What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Welcome to our daily show where we discuss everything going on here in our country that you need to know about here on a daily basis. The White House economic advisor, Jared Bernstein, says that the White House is doing all they can to ease pricing pressures and inflation, as the newest inflation numbers are not really going down. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Yeah, really tough out there right now. Inflation just persistent, not really coming down. In fact, it was higher this month than what they had anticipated. And yeah, we're seeing, in fact, food actually rising here, inflation. We had seen gas come down for 100 days, but then the OPEC nations, Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus, so we got multiple different nations over in the Middle East and in Europe and stuff, said, no, 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 we don't want oil prices and gas prices to go down. We're going to cut production by 2 million barrels a day, despite U.S. pressure. And really, they're doing this to raise prices of oil and gas to the whole world and the US. So this is the problem here. Gas prices and oil prices going up around the whole world. Multiple nations here and countries in the OPEC Plus group, like Saudi Arabia and Russia, purposely raising prices of oil and gas, even though we don't buy any gas from Russia. This has raised the price of oil prices and thus has raised the price of gas prices, as we're seeing gas prices go up every single day now. Yeah, so right now you can see gas has stopped going down. It's actually leveled off here in the last few days. But you can see here the national average price of gas, we're up 20 cents over what it was a month ago. Diesel up 22 cents over what it was a month ago. California up over $1 what it was a month ago. California prices are actually dropping here recently. You can see here a week ago they were $6.39. Now they're $6.15. So they've actually dropped what is that? About 24 cents here in the last week. Maybe the oil and gas companies are getting a little bit nervous as Governor Gavin Newsom here is threatening to hit them with a tax windfall profits tax. As this was, you can see here, just in the last month, again, changes every 30 days. This is based on the last 30 days. It's still up about, what is that, a little bit less than 70 cents. At one point, this was up over $1.20, that prices in gas in California were up over $1.20, in some areas over $1.50, that they raised gas prices in California $1.50 in just 30 days. And the oil companies said it was because of refinery maintenance. And remember, the oil companies haven't built a refinery in over 50 years here in the US. And they say they don't want to either. It's part of their plan to keep oil prices high. Remember, OPEC and OPEC Plus nations just cut oil production by 2 million barrels a day so that they can raise the price on all this stuff. So it is kind of tough. If you were the president, what would you do? It's tough because the oil companies are cutting production. You can't really say drill, baby, drill, because the oil companies and the oil nations are cutting production. Yeah, so these oil companies, they know exactly what they're doing. And meanwhile, they'll blame it on the president or other nations, or they'll blame it on whoever they want, but they're laughing their way to the bank as they're making record profits. They're making higher profits this year than they've ever made in the history of their companies. This is their highest profit last 12 months ever. And this is really contributing to inflation. These oil companies and gas companies making more money than they ever had before. You got to think that it's part of the reason food prices are high. Of course, gas prices are high. Everything's got to be shipped to a store. Yeah, really, really, it really, really sucks, to be honest. And meanwhile, some places in California already back on track to see $8 a gallon gas. Not a good thing. And we know over time these prices just going to keep going higher. So what do we do? And what do we do? And these gas companies are just going to continue to find ways to make prices higher. And OPEC plus nations going to continue to find ways to make us pay more and blame it on anybody they can. So the question here is, how long is inflation going to remain high? What can be done about it? The problem is the U.S. is looking at external pressures here on a lot of different factors, like OPEC plus. They control 80% of the world's reserves for oil, and they're purposely cutting oil production 2 million barrels a day. They could do even more in the future, and oil's at between $80 and $90 a barrel. So it's really not even that low. Think about where gas prices are where you are. I mean, $4 a gallon. I mean, over in Europe, it's $5, $6, $7 a gallon, depending on what country you're in. Uh, kind of like how California is. But we actually have cheaper gas than most countries in the rest of the world if you equate it to US dollars and US gallons. And they're not happy. They're like, "Yeah, we gotta get more money for our oil here. It's just not enough." And meanwhile, the whole world is basically dealing with a recession. And this is why the US is and Congress is kind of like, we need to do something about this no PEC bill, no OPEC bill, and put the pressure on them. But that it's kind of difficult. I mean, we've been trying to put the pressure on Russia, and so has the rest of the world here with Russia and the war. And you see how stubborn Putin has been with abandoning the war effort. That hasn't really been going that well. I mean, we're over 6 months here in the war, and he's just, persistent to continue doing that. You know, so it's not really an easy thing here. In fact, look, they actually just had a vote here. If you're ever like curious, thinking like, oh, is Russia actually like wrong in this case? I get some people saying that, like, well, is the US actually right? Is Russia actually wrong? So the United Nations, basically the whole world, just voted. The United Nations just took a vote on the Ukraine annexations, where Russia basically took control of a massive part of Ukraine. It's like over 15%, almost 20% of Ukraine. Here's what the vote entailed. The United Nations, so not NATO, okay, the entire world basically, the United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday voted on whether or not to condemn Russia's annexations of the four major regions, occupied areas of Ukraine amid the ongoing war. Only four other countries sided with Russia in the vote out of 193 countries in the world. So 143 countries voted against Russia. 35 countries abstained, basically wanted to remain neutral. So 143 countries said, yeah, Russia's sham election was a sham. It was illegal. They shouldn't have done it. And voted against Russia. 35 abstained, said we don't want to vote in this. We want to remain neutral for whatever reason. And the only 4 countries to join Russia, Russia being the 5th vote, were Syria, North Korea, Belarus, and Nicaragua. Were the only countries in the entire world that sided with Russia. Even China didn't side with Russia on this matter. They abstained from voting. The opposition club is nearly the same as the votes in March when the United Nations voted as well, when they condemned Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. When the United Nations voted to vote on whether or not to condemn Russia on the invasion, and again, the same countries were the only ones that actually backed Russia. So also Eritrea was another country that backed them. So this now passed resolution calls on the United Nations member states not to recognize Russia's annexation move and calls for Russia to rescind its claims over the Ukrainian land. So this goes to show you, if you're ever wondering what the world thinks, sometimes you get some people saying, oh, well, the people believe that it's Russian territory, or how do we know if the US is right, or if Russia's right, or if Europe's right? This is what the world thinks, okay? All the countries got to vote on their own accord, and basically Russia and only 4 other people sided with Russia, and 143 people voted against Russia, countries. So let me know your thoughts on this, but basically 98% of the world thinks that Russia was wrong. Votes, actions speak louder than words. And meanwhile, Americans' nuclear fears surged to the highest levels since the Cold War. So Americans think, these are the headlines. Americans think that this is a legitimate possibility, especially when President Biden in his recent interview was the first thing he talked about. Quote, the level of anxiety is something that I haven't seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis, said Peter Kucinich, a history professor and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University, referring to the tense 1962 standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. That was short-lived. This has gone on for months now. Meanwhile, NATO official says, remember, the U.S. is part of NATO and 30 countries. A Russian nuclear strike would likely provoke a physical response. A Russian nuclear strike would change the course of the conflict in Ukraine and almost certainly provoke a physical response from Ukraine's allies and potentially from NATO, which includes the US. Any use of nuclear weapons by Moscow would have unprecedented consequences for Russia, the official said, on the eve of a closed-door meeting of NATO's nuclear planning group on Thursday. He spoke being anonymous here. He said a nuclear strike by Moscow would almost certainly be drawing a physical response from many allies and potentially from NATO itself. Still, Moscow appears to be using nuclear threats mainly to deter NATO and other countries from directly entering its war on Ukraine, which we're not and they're not doing at this point. Honestly, if Russia didn't have nukes, this would be a completely different story. That's the biggest problem, is that they have 6,000 nukes. We have roughly about the same, but nobody wants a nuke-to-nuke conflict. A nuclear exchange would be the worst thing for this entire planet. So, this is something we want to avoid. We want to find a way to end the war so we can all just kind of have the Cuban Missile Crisis go away in this case. But it's just like, Putin he's being pushed back now. Meanwhile, he just like kind of claimed this territory with this, election, and basically said, "Well, I'm going to claim this territory," as he's being pushed back out of it. But he also drafted 300,000 new men per se. They're like, men over 50, men who have never really been in the army, and also retired people and stuff like that. So he's drafting in more men than he ever had before, and they're like trying to train them really quick. So I mean, that we'll have to see what happens there. And meanwhile, they're being pushed back out of this territory that they just claimed. So I mean, he he could really. I mean, I fear the day that we wake up and see, oh, he did use a nuke. I really hope that doesn't happen, because we really just want this to be over and done with. Because it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. And if that happens, I mean, stock markets around the world would just be crumbled. I mean, remember, 50% of retirees in the U.S. have money in the stock market, 401ks, pensions, retirees, and really, that's not even like the worst of it. The worst of it is it's a nuclear bomb, nuclear war. Like, this is just like something we don't want to happen at all. So hopefully, it's like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where it's just a scare. It's something that we can avert. But meanwhile, it's something that's very possible. I mean, literally, in President Biden's interview was the first thing he addressed. So when you're dealing with basically Hitler 2.0, the guy's capable of anything. How do you maneuver around that? It's tough, because we're not really speaking directly with him. He's not speaking directly with us. The negotiations are not really there. The negotiations are like, well, he wants to just claim thousands and thousands of miles of Ukraine. It would be like him claiming thousands and thousands of miles of Alaska, which, remember, that they also recently said, I mean, here's the headline: top Russian lawmakers threatens that Russia may reclaim Alaska as well. Because remember, Russia used to be part of Russia used to be owned by Alaska back in the 1800s, when the U.S. bought Alaska from Russia. So this is like what we're dealing with here, and not just us, the whole world, because it's like basically a loose cannon over there with 6,000 nuclear bombs, and it's like we're trying to like walk on ice to figure out this puzzle on how to end this thing, and and it's just like it's a complete nightmare. So let me know your thoughts on this. And it's just like, imagine if they were trying to reclaim Alaska, which they actually threatened to do. I mean, this is a headline back from July. They actually said this. Now, I don't think they're going to try to do this, because the U.S. literally wouldn't allow this to happen. But this is the type of shit that they say. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. It's just, when you're dealing with crazy people, it's like, how do you deal with crazy people, but also like they have nuclear weapons? So let me know your thoughts here in the comments, and I'll keep you up to date with everything going on here on a daily basis. So make sure to subscribe down below. Hopefully hopefully this is just a scare. We get through it, and it's just another thing of the past. It's just another Cuban Missile Crisis. And we'll be like, you know what? Hey, Jimmy, remember that scare? Maybe it was just like, the debt ceiling, which actually is going to be another thing coming up here. That's going to be another thing coming up here again, the debt ceiling, if it's not one thing or another. But hopefully it's just another scare, and we'll get through it as usual. So let me know your thoughts here in the comments, and I'll keep you up to date here on a daily basis. Make sure to subscribe down below to our YouTube channel. It's completely free to do so. New videos come out here every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'll keep up to date. You can click here to see my newest video on Social Security announcement that just came out. And here is my newest video about potential $3,000 stimulus checks coming out here for some people. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.